Psychics hired by the CIA to hunt biblical relics, golden treasures hidden in bank vaults, secret chambers inside the Great Pyramid, unreadable scripts sitting in museums, and entire writing systems lost because the people who understood them were wiped out. These are mysterious artifacts from ancient civilizations. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd was wandering near the cliffs above the Dead Sea. While tossing rocks near a cave, one of his stones broke the surface of a jar, and inside were scrolls wrapped in linen. What he'd stumbled across would become one of the most famous archaeological finds of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. These were biblical manuscripts over 2,000 years old, some of the oldest ever found. The discovery would shake up the study of early Judaism and Christianity, but almost immediately there was controversy. For nearly 50 years, access to the scrolls was controlled by a tiny group of scholars, maybe 8 people in total. They decided what could be studied, what could be published, and what would remain secret. The rest of the academic world was locked out completely. By 1989, even though the scrolls had been discovered over 40 years earlier, less than half of them had been published. Researchers who requested access were turned down without explanation. The situation was so ridiculous that the Biblical Archaeology Review called it a scandal. But in 1991, the Huntington Library in California revealed they had a full set of photographs of the scrolls and opened them to the public. Around the same time, scholars started reconstructing unpublished text using computer analysis. The Israeli Antiquities Authority had no choice but to lift restrictions. But by the time the scrolls were finally opened to all scholars, an entire generation had missed the chance to study them, and even now, a few scrolls from Cave 11 are privately owned and unavailable to researchers. You've probably seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. I certainly hope so. Well, the CIA actually tried to find it as well, using psychics. Yes, that is real. In December 1988, during a program called Project Sunstreak, the US intelligence community asked someone known only as Remote Viewer 32 to locate an unknown target. That target ended up being the Ark, the biblical chest said to hold the 10 Commandments. Remote viewing is basically psychic spying, projecting your mind to see distant places. Is it impossible? Of course it is. As much as some of you nutcases in the comments are probably going to argue with me on that. But anyway, the US spent years and millions on this during the Cold War. The psychic described a damp underground chamber somewhere in the Middle East with people speaking Arabic and domed buildings nearby. The container was wooden, covered in gold and silver, and decorated with winged figures, pretty close to biblical descriptions. The documents were declassified in 2000, but didn't get major attention until 2025. The CIA never tried to actually dig anything up. Even one of the original remote viewers, Joe McMonigal, has said that claiming remote viewing proves the Ark exists is meaningless. You need the actual Ark as proof. Pretty crazy though that this kind of paranormal research was happening at the CIA. It was just the times though. During the Cold War, they were desperate to find any edge, even using supposed psychics to locate ancient religious artifacts. In 1978, Soviet archaeologist Viktor Saryanidi was digging in northern Afghanistan when he uncovered the Tilia Tepe site, or Hill of Gold. He found 6 burial mounds stuffed with over 20,000 golden objects, from crowns to necklaces, some showing Greek, Roman, Persian, Chinese, and Indian designs. Afghanistan was clearly a hub for trading. And then in 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. The artifacts were moved to Kabul's National Museum, but as civil war broke out in the late 80s, the museum was repeatedly looted. About 70% of its collection was gone. In 1989, President Mohammad Najibullah secretly moved the Tilia Tepe treasure into an underground vault at the central bank. He implemented a strict security system, 5 separate keys, each held by a different trusted person whose identity was kept secret. For over a decade, the treasure was thought lost. There were rumors that it had been sold on the black market. After the Taliban fell in 2003, the new government tried to open the vault. They couldn't find all the key holders at first since their identities had been kept secret. Eventually, they located everyone though, cracked the vault, and discovered all 22,000 objects. National Geographic cataloged the collection and it toured museums around the world. When US forces entered Baghdad in 2003, reports claimed the Iraq Museum had been completely looted, 170,000 artifacts gone. But much of that was wrong. Museum staff had secretly moved their most valuable pieces before the invasion. Some treasures had been hidden as far back as the First Gulf War in 1991. About 8,000 pieces from public galleries were packed into boxes and stored in secret vaults, possibly still on the museum grounds. In June 2003, US officials announced they'd found the treasures of Nimrud in a flooded vault under the Iraqi central bank. These included gold objects from Assyrian royal tombs dating to the 8th and 9th centuries BCE. National Geographic helped pump out the water, revealing 613 pieces of gold jewelry and ornaments, all in pretty good condition. Some bodies of looters were even found inside, apparently rival gangs who'd fought over access. The final count, about 15,000 items actually went missing, not 170,000. The Warka vase, a key piece in art history, turned up in the trunk of a Volkswagen. Thousands of years, people assumed the Great Pyramid of Giza had no secrets left to reveal, but in 2017, scientists using cosmic ray detectors, those are real, actually, not from a science fiction movie, well, they announced they'd found a massive void inside the pyramid that nobody knew existed. The Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, basically using particles from space that constantly rain down on Earth to see through solid stone. Muons pass through empty spaces more easily than solid rock, so by setting up detectors in different locations, scientists can map out voids. 3 separate teams used 3 different types of detectors, and all of them picked up the same signal, a space above the Grand Gallery at least 30 meters long, with a cross-section similar to the gallery itself. This is the first major internal structure discovered since the 19th century. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities was not thrilled about the announcement, though. Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of Antiquities, immediately said they'd found nothing and that the paper offered 0 to Egyptology. He argued that there are lots of voids in the pyramid, stress relief chambers built into the structure to distribute weight. He said the team didn't understand pyramid construction, but the team running Scan Pyramids disagrees. They're confident in their data, but they also acknowledge there's some uncertainty about the exact purpose of the void. They won't speculate about what's in there until more scanning is done from different angles. The raw scan data and exact technical specifications haven't been fully released to the public. The researchers want to continue scanning before anyone talks about trying to access the chamber physically. On July 3, 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier was excavating the Palace of Phaistos on Crete when he found something that's confused experts ever since. It's a clay disc about 6 inches across, covered on both sides with symbols arranged in a spiral pattern. Nobody can read it. The Phaistos disc has 242 symbols made up of 45 distinct signs. What makes it unique is that these symbols weren't carved or scratched into the clay, they were actually stamped. Someone created individual stamps for each symbol and pressed them into soft clay before firing it. This makes it possibly the earliest example of movable type printing. The symbols show human figures, animals, plants, tools, and geometric shapes. Some look vaguely like other Minoan scripts, but there are huge differences. It's possibly from around 1700 BCE, the Middle Minoan period, but even that's debated. And here's the fundamental problem. This is a one-of-a-kind artifact. I mean, you need multiple examples to crack an unknown script, and this is the only object with these particular symbols. There have been hundreds of interpretations over the years. Some think it's a hymn or a prayer, maybe a game board, a calendar, or a forgery. One archaeologist in 2008 thought that Pernier faked it to compete with other famous discoveries at the time. What makes this particularly frustrating is that if we could read it, we might learn an enormous amount about Minoan civilization, but until then, this thing is just a total mystery. Easter Island is known for its giant stone heads, but the Rapa Nui also created a writing system called Rongorongo. Today, fewer than 30 wooden tablets are around, scattered across museums throughout the world. None remain on the island itself. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raids kidnapped most of the island's priests and chiefs, the people who knew how to read Rongorongo. Then there was smallpox, and by the 1870s, traditional culture was destroyed along with the knowledge of the script. The tablets that survive are extremely fragile. The Berlin tablet, over 3 feet long, is so eroded that more than half is unreadable. Researchers now rely on photos and 3D scans to try and study the inscriptions.
Egypt is famous for its pyramids, mummies, and golden treasures, but there is a darker side to these discoveries that rarely makes it into the history books. Over the years, archaeologists have stumbled on objects so unsettling, so confusing that they were quietly locked away from the public eye. Whether it's artifacts tied to death rituals, strange experiments, or items that seemed far too advanced for their time, these are the disturbing Egyptian artifacts the world wasn't supposed to see. Imagine an entire Egyptian city vanishing beneath the sea and staying hidden for nearly 2,000 years. That's exactly what happened off of Abu Qir Bay near Alexandria. Recent underwater excavations revealed the ruins of Canopus, a city once known for lavish festivals and religious rites that attracted people from across the ancient world. What divers found beneath the waves was eerie. There were massive stone statues lying headless on the seafloor, coins scattered across the sand, marble figures with limbs missing, and even carved docks and warehouses that looked like they were abandoned in a single moment of chaos. Archaeologists believe earthquakes and tsunamis swallowed the city whole, locking away its treasures for centuries. Even today, many of the relics remain too fragile to move. They sit underwater, preserved but out of reach, like a time capsule of disaster. It's disturbing to realize that a place once filled with music, rituals, and life now rests silent in the dark, its secrets still locked away from the public. In 2008, archaeologists digging in the ruins of Akhenaten, in the city built by the pharaoh Akhenaten, found a tiny object that didn't look like much. It was a whistle carved from the toe bone of a young cow. At first, it was catalogued and quietly stored away, but when researchers finally re-examined it years later, they realized that it was over 3,300 years old and was far more unsettling than it seemed. This wasn't a toy. It was likely used by a guard or police officer to control access to the sacred tombs being built nearby. Replicas proved the whistle made a sharp, piercing sound, the kind that could stop workers in their tracks. What makes it disturbing is the glimpse it gives us into the control and surveillance that existed even in the ancient world. A simple bone whistle, hidden in storage for years, turns out to be the echo of authority and fear in one of Egypt's most sacred places. In the 1800s, archaeologists began unearthing mummies in the Fayum region with something highly unusual: incredibly lifelike painted portraits covering their faces. Unlike the stylized, stiff art of ancient Egypt, these paintings looked almost like photographs. The eyes were hauntingly realistic, the expressions deeply human, but what disturbed experts most was that some of these portraits looked like they belonged in a modern art gallery rather than on 2,000-year-old mummies. Imagine a delicate hat made of organic stuff, surviving thousands of years just because it was forgotten in storage. This is the story of a sun hat found in Ilahan in the Fayum region in Egypt back in 1888. It's dated to be between 2,100 and 2,400 years old, so roughly from the Greek or Roman period in Egypt. Experts believe it was likely worn by a Roman soldier or someone under Roman influence adapting to the Egyptian climate. What makes it disturbing or eerie is how fragile textile artifacts usually are. Most textile pieces decay very quickly unless the conditions are perfect. This hat survived because the ground was very dry, but for over 115 years it was just in storage at Bolton Museum in the UK, almost completely out of sight. Its survival seemed almost miraculous, not because it had supernatural properties, but because of how unlikely it was that something so perishable would continue to exist. And now it is finally on display. In the late 19th century, archaeologists working in the ancient Egyptian city of Oxyrhynchus discovered an enormous collection of papyrus manuscripts buried in the sand. We're talking hundreds of thousands of fragments. Among them were poems, lost plays from ancient Greece, and even religious writings that never made it into the Bible. What disturbed scholars most was how many of these texts contradicted what we thought we knew about the ancient world. Some writings hinted at secret rituals, while others contained stories that were simply too strange to classify. The sheer volume was overwhelming, and for years, most of the collection was hidden away in storage at Oxford University. Even today, researchers estimate that less than 10% of the papyri have been translated, meaning countless secrets are still locked away. In 1907, archaeologists uncovered a Middle Kingdom tomb containing 2 mummies. At first, the discovery seemed ordinary, but when researchers examined the remains, they found something shocking. The mummies were preserved with extraordinary care, but their DNA revealed that they weren't actually brothers by blood. One was of Egyptian descent, while the other had Nubian ancestry. Their lavish burial together in a tomb meant for close relatives challenged long-held assumptions about Egyptian family structures and identity. The unsettling discovery suggested that ancient Egyptians may have deliberately blurred the lines of kinship, perhaps for political or ritual reasons. The artifacts from the tomb were quietly kept from the public for decades, as the findings didn't fit the clean narrative of Egyptian history being taught at the time. In the Cairo Museum, hidden away from display for years, is a mysterious carved stone slab covered in what some researchers claim looks like a map. It was nicknamed the Dashka stone. The strange part? Some believe the lines and patterns on it resemble river systems and geological features of Egypt that would not have been known thousands of years ago. Even more disturbing, a few claimed it even shows areas that could only be mapped with aerial knowledge. Mainstream Egyptologists insist it's just decorative or symbolic, but the controversy around it led to the artifact being locked in storage rather than displayed to the public. Whether it's an ancient oddity or evidence of forgotten knowledge, the fact that it's rarely studied makes it all the more mysterious. Discovered in the late 1800s at the site of Akhenaten, the Amarna letters were clay tablets written in cuneiform that documented correspondence between the Egyptian pharaohs and other rulers of the ancient Near East. At first glance, they look like routine diplomatic texts, but a closer reading revealed something deeply unsettling. They contained desperate pleas from vassal states begging Egypt for military aid, warnings of invasions, and even references to mysterious groups like the Hibiru, often linked to early Hebrews. These records painted Egypt not as an invincible empire, but as a kingdom struggling to maintain control. The fragile image of ancient Egypt as unstoppable was shattered, and for years, many of these letters were hidden away in archives. They revealed a far more chaotic and vulnerable world than people were comfortable admitting. In 1954, archaeologists found a massive cedarwood ship buried at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was sealed in a limestone pit and perfectly preserved for over 4,000 years. At first, it seemed like a stunning treasure, but the more experts studied it, the stranger it became. The ship was fully functional, large enough to sail, yet there was no evidence it had ever touched water. Instead, it appeared to be a symbolic solar bark meant to carry Pharaoh Khufu into the afterlife. What disturbed some researchers was the craftsmanship. The ship was built with incredible precision, using a construction method that seemed far too advanced for its time. The discovery was so strange that for years the boat was hidden from the public, only restored and displayed decades later. Even now, many of its mysteries remain unsolved. In 2015, archaeologists announced the discovery of an underground tomb in Abu Sir that they believed was dedicated to the god Osiris. The tomb included a large central shaft leading to a chamber with a black sarcophagus surrounded by smaller burial chambers. The layout was eerily similar to ancient descriptions of the mythical tomb of Osiris himself. Some scholars dismissed the connection as symbolic, but the imagery inside was disturbing. There were carvings depicting demons, protective deities, and scenes of resurrection. The sarcophagus was empty, but the fact that the tomb matched so closely with myth raised unsettling questions. Was this just a symbolic temple, or had someone once been buried as a living embodiment of Osiris? For years, the site was closed to the public, accessible only to researchers. The secrecy has only fueled speculation that there was something inside the tomb the world wasn't ready to see.
Mysterious, out-of-place artifacts, strange ancient ruins. Who built these things and why?
And perhaps more importantly, when?
There's something very mysterious about this pillar in India, known as the Iron Pillar of Delhi. It seems impervious to rust, even after 1,600 years of being exposed to the elements. The pillar dates back to the Gupta period around 375 to 413 AD, and the fact that it doesn't rust is pretty impressive. Building something like this would have been challenging without advanced technology and precise chemical treatments. Standing about 23 feet tall and weighing over 6 tons, the pillar was first erected in Udayagiri and later moved to its current location. It bears an inscription in Sanskrit praising a king named Chandra, believed to be Chandragupta II. The pillar has been exposed to harsh weather for centuries, but it's still mostly rust-free. It turns out that the iron used in the pillar was made of misawite, which is a compound of iron, oxygen, and hydrogen which helps protect the iron from rusting, but the method they would have used to achieve this is still a mystery and makes some people wonder if certain ancient civilizations had access to technology far beyond their or even our time.
If you were to Google when the first battery was invented, you would be told that it was invented in 1800 by Alessandro Volta and John Stringfellow. Great name, by the way. But that would be wrong, because in 1938, archaeologists discovered the first true battery, which was actually created around 2,000 years ago. The batteries, made with clay jars and iron rods capable of producing more than a volt of electricity, were found just outside of Baghdad, Iraq. 3 were discovered, and since their discovery, nothing of the like has ever been found again. The exact origin of the batteries remains unclear, but what is clear is that the society that made them was either incredibly advanced or had help from someone from the future, perhaps even Volta and Stringfellow, and if that's the case, the answer Google gives you would be in fact correct. It's possible. Anything's possible.
The Saqqara bird is a small wooden artifact that was found in an ancient Egyptian tomb near Saqqara. It's about 2,200 years old, and at first glance, it's a bird. But when you look a little closer, you might notice that it looks a lot like a model airplane. Unlike other bird statues from ancient Egypt, this one doesn't have legs, and its wings are shaped differently. It's a pretty unique design that just adds another layer of mystery to the history of ancient Egypt, which is already full of mysteries. Did ancient Egyptians know something about flying? Back in 1969, an Egyptian doctor suggested that the Saqqara bird might be an ancient model of some sort of flying machine. People have even made replicas of it to see if it could fly, and some of these models do glide pretty well when launched. Now, most archaeologists think the thing was just a toy, but I mean, what if they did know more than we give them credit for? Or what if someone far in the future managed to pay them a visit, and some ancient Egyptian sculptor based this small wooden piece off of a strange, unexplained object they saw gliding overhead one day?
If Antarctica was discovered in January of 1820, then tell me, why did it show up on a map created in 1513? The Piri Reis map, to be exact, created by Turkish admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. While the map doesn't outright say the word Antarctica, many people believe the landmass located at the bottom right corner to be representative of the continent, about 34 million years ago before it became covered in ice. This was confirmed by Captain Lorenzo W. Burroughs of the US Air Force, who said that the landmass in the Piri Reis map accurately depicted the coast of Antarctica that is now currently hidden under ice. This is strange for a few reasons. 1. How did Piri Reis know about Antarctica? And 2. If Antarctica froze 34 million years ago and the map was made in 1513, how did Piri Reis know about its formerly subtropical climate without the use of modern day technology? Is this guy a time traveler, and if so, did he travel backwards or forwards to learn this information?
The London hammer is one of the most famous out-of-place artifacts. It was found in 1936 in London, Texas, by a couple named Max and Emma Hahn while they were out exploring. They found the hammer embedded in a rock formation that was estimated to be around 100 million years old. The hammer itself looks surprisingly modern though. It has a wooden handle and a metal head, which, when examined, seems to be made of iron and steel, materials that weren't supposed to be around during the time the rock was formed. The rock surrounding the hammer was found to be from the Cretaceous period, a time when dinosaurs roamed the earth, long before humans or even advanced tools like this hammer were believed to have existed. There are some pretty wacky but fun ideas about the hammer, one being that it could be a remnant from a future civilization that somehow ended up in the past and accidentally left the tool behind.
Nuclear energy was invented on December 2nd of 1942, but the first nuclear reactor existed almost 2 billion years ago. How does that work? Well, I'll tell you. In 1972, a French factory was importing uranium ore from Africa's Gabon Republic when they stumbled across something fascinating. A 2 billion year old large-scale nuclear reactor that was likely in operation for some 500,000 years. Now, while some scientists claim the reactor to be nothing more than a fluke natural phenomenon, others, such as Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, former head of the United States Atomic Energy Commission and Nobel Prize winner for his work in synthesis of heavy elements, believes the reactor to be man-made because, in his words, in order for uranium to burn in a reactor, very precise conditions are needed. Conditions that he does not believe just somehow happened in nature. The question here is, did someone go back in time to create this, or did someone go forward in time to spread the good word about the endless possibilities of nuclear energy? You tell me.
Back in 2012, a strange cylindrical object was discovered by residents of a small rural village in Siberia. The object weighed hundreds of pounds and was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Village residents hooked it up to a trailer and hauled it back to town, where they alerted the authorities, who came and picked it up to be studied. Now, the villagers, as well as folks on the internet, started speculating as to what this mysterious object was and where it came from. Of course, space was being thrown around in almost every conversation. Was this part of some secretive spacefaring government technology? Was it alien in origin? Well, an official at the Russian Space Agency soon made a statement that the object had no relation to space technology of any kind, but if it wasn't part of a spacecraft of some kind, then what was it, and how did it end up there? Nobody knows.
For a while, it was widely accepted that the first spark plug was invented in 1839, but all that changed in 1961 when 3 individuals stumbled across a much older version of a spark plug encased in a geode in California while out searching for items to sell in their gem and gift shop. After the discovery, a geologist dated the device to be at least 500,000 years old, if not older. While some people believe the device to have been a modern spark plug encased in a quick-forming concretion rather than a geode, there is not enough concrete evidence to support that theory. And so many people continue to believe the device to be an incredibly advanced relic from ancient times. Or perhaps it is a modern-day spark plug that was placed in ancient times as some kind of Easter egg for the future. Either one is pretty cool.
Take a look at this formation here. It certainly seems to be ancient, and it is. It's also incredibly mysterious. It's called the Porobajin, and ever since it was discovered, archaeologists and historians have been trying to figure out who built it and why. Situated in a lake in southern Siberia, the ancient structure, which was discovered in 1891, seems to have been built around 1300 years ago. It's one of Russia's strangest historical landmarks. There's just no concrete information about its purpose, its builders, and the rationale behind choosing such an isolated location to build it. It's in an area well away from any settlements or trade routes. It's also lacking a heating system, which is strange because of the harsh winters at its high altitude location. The layout of the ruins seems to have a bit of a Chinese influence though, almost like city palaces from the Tang dynasty. The neat grid arrangement of smaller houses around the inner courtyard is similar to many Tang Buddhist monasteries, but there's still no definitive evidence as to what this place was. Was it a monastery, a palace complex, a fusion of both, or could it possibly have been built by beings not from this world?
You know what suggests that time travel exists? Ancient texts estimated to have been written in 400 BC talking about how time travel exists. Specifically, Mahabharata, an ancient piece of Hindu text that alludes to the phenomenon. On numerous occasions, the 1,500-page script mentions incidents in which individuals traveled through time and experienced something called time dilation, a physical phenomenon in which time moves differently for different observers in the same inertial frame. Time travel has also been mentioned in the Quran, written around 250 CE. The Theodosius II, a Christian text written around 420 CE, the Urashima Taro, a Japanese text written in the 18th century, and many other pieces of ancient literature. The concept is far from new, but if time travel is real, then time is an illusion, and new is just a word that, in the scheme of things, doesn't really matter.
Some discoveries from the ancient world feel so close you can practically sense the echoes of long-lost lives. Whether it's a lifelike face frozen in time, or a chilling ritual object buried deep underground, these finds pack a visceral punch that's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling. Get ready for a journey through the most haunting artifacts ever unearthed, each one a tangible link to civilizations that continue to captivate us from beyond the ages. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we are talking about the High Andes discovery. High in the Andes, nearly on the border between Argentina and Chile, archaeologists uncovered 3 remarkably preserved individuals who belonged to the Inca civilization. Their garments, adorned with intricate designs, still looked surprisingly vibrant, and their braided hair remained perfectly intact despite the passage of centuries. The frigid mountain environment acted like a natural time capsule, keeping these figures in a near pristine state, complete with calm facial expressions that give little hint of the ceremony they likely took part in. Experts believe a sacred rite called Capacocha may explain their mountaintop resting place, though precisely why they were selected and what the full ritual entailed continues to spark debate. What truly captivates observers is how these figures look so peaceful, almost as if they've just fallen asleep, despite having existed during the mid-15th century CE. This unique find offers a direct glimpse into Inca spiritual life, reminding us that some ancient cultures honored important ceremonies in ways that are both awe-inspiring and also a touch unsettling. Next up, we are talking about the Tulland Man of the Bogs. Unearthed in 1950 on Denmark's Jutland Peninsula, Tulland Man presents one of the most striking examples of a bog body preservation. He was discovered with a cap on his head and a braided cord around his neck, a detail that hints at a ceremonial or otherwise dramatic end. Yet it's his face that truly leaves a lasting impression. His closed eyes and calm expression appears as though he's simply just taking a nap. The special chemistry of the peat bog tanned his skin, giving it a leather-like quality that has kept even the faint stubble on his chin recognizable. Scientists date his life back to around the 4th century BCE, a period rich in cultural practices that often involved returning offerings to the bogs. Though theories differ on the exact nature of his final moments, the contrast between the tension implied by the cord and his tranquil appearance remains profoundly intriguing. Today, Tulland Man stands as a silent ambassador from the distant past, showcasing how entire lifetimes can just be frozen in time. Next up, we are talking about the mummies of Guanajuato. In Guanajuato, Mexico, an unassuming cemetery became the unlikely stage for a haunting spectacle when local authorities began exhuming remains in the late 19th century. Thanks to the region's arid climate, many bodies had naturally mummified, resulting in torsos, limbs, and even faces that look startlingly intact. Some appear to have wide open mouths and twisting expressions, creating an atmosphere reminiscent of a silent scream. While these dramatic poses often stem from post-mortem processes rather than real-time anguish, it doesn't diminish the unsettling effect when you see them up close. Today, the Museo de las Momias exhibits these figures, allowing visitors an unvarnished encounter with something both deeply human and undeniably eerie. Each mummy's pose and preserved clothing offers clues to daily life in 19th century Guanajuato, turning them into unintentional storytellers. Next, we are talking about the Lady of Dai. Buried over 2,000 years ago, the individual known as the Lady of Dai has astonished the archaeological community with her almost unreal level of preservation. Discovered in the Mawangdu tombs near Changsha, China, she has skin that retains elasticity, bendable joints, and organs that could be examined in laboratory conditions. Researchers attribute her condition to an exceptional burial system that involved multiple layers of lacquered coffins, plus a still unidentified fluid, creating a micro-environment where decay hardly stood a chance. This Han Dynasty aristocrat, whose given name was Xin Zhu, likely led a life of privilege, evidenced by her abundant silks and luxuries surrounding her. Yet, the sense of wonder quickly gives way to a mild unease when witnessing such a vivid link to the past. It's almost as if she exists in a twilight zone between life and death. Her discovery has allowed scientists to glean unprecedented details about health, diet, and even cosmetic practices from a civilization that thrived 2 millennia ago. Next up, we are talking about the Chowchilla mummies. Sitting upright in open-air graves under the scorching Peruvian sun, the figures in Chowchilla Cemetery are a macabre reminder of how nature sometimes holds on to the past. Many date back nearly 1,000 years, and their preservation owes much to the bone-dry conditions of the Nazca Desert. Torn textiles still cling to skeletons, and in some cases, strands of hair drape across shoulders in a spectral fashion. With their mouths often agape and eye sockets fixed on the eternal horizon, these mummies create a stark confrontation between the living and the long deceased. Despite the initially jarring appearance, these remains have proven incredibly valuable for understanding the cultural practices of the region's ancient peoples. Grave goods, pottery shards, and remnants of clothing all lend insight into how these desert dwellers lived and honored their dead. Next, we are talking about the vampire burial of Lugnano. Nestled in a 5th century Italian cemetery, a particular burial site earned a legendary nickname. Archaeologists found a skeleton with a sizable stone placed firmly in its mouth, a practice associated with local lore aimed at preventing a rise from the grave. Nicknamed the Vampire of Lugnano, this discovery points to the depth of fear people once held about the dead possibly returning. Adding to the eerie atmosphere, researchers unearthed signs of disease, suggesting the community was dealing with a troubling outbreak that might have fueled supernatural worries. Although modern perspectives see the stone-in-mouth practice as an extreme measure driven by strong beliefs and traditions, it still feels like a story straight from the pages of an old folktale. Next, we are talking about the Shagir idol. Pulled from a Russian peat bog in the late 19th century, the Shagir idol has quietly stood guard over millennia of human history. Radiocarbon dating suggests it's over 11,000 years old, making it the oldest known wooden sculpture on Earth. Rising over twice the height of an average person, this towering figure is intricately carved with geometric patterns and distinct facial features that give it a strangely commanding presence. Scholars debate its original use. Some propose it was a totem, while others guess it had ceremonial significance or was a map of spiritual knowledge. Either way, the idol's large, watchful eyes and segmented body radiate an air of mystery that transcends time. Its discovery in a bog was fortunate, as the high acidity and low oxygen in the peat prevented decay for thousands of years. Despite continued studies, the Shagir idol remains an enigma, a wordless record of a culture so ancient that it may never fully yield its secrets. Next, we are talking about the Mount Owen Moa Claw. Deep within a cave on New Zealand's Mount Owen, explorers made a discovery that feels straight out of a fantasy novel. A gigantic claw, still retaining muscle and skin, was all that remained of a moa, an enormous flightless bird that once roamed these islands. Even though the species has been extinct for centuries, the claw's condition looks alarmingly fresh, as though it belonged to a creature that passed away only recently. The moa itself stood as a formidable presence in ancient New Zealand, towering over most humans and roaming forests with little to fear, aside from local predators and environmental changes. Holding the claw in hand, or even just seeing photos, can trigger a visceral sense of time travel, bridging the gap between a lost natural world and our present day. It is a jarring reminder that Earth has witnessed countless species fade into history, sometimes leaving behind artifacts that practically dare us to believe they're still alive. Next, we are talking about the plaster casts of Pompeii. When the great eruption of Mount Vesuvius sealed Pompeii under layers of ash in 79 CE, an entire city was frozen in a moment of panic. Many centuries later, archaeologists noticed hollow pockets in the hardened ash, which turned out to be spaces where bodies had once been. By filling these voids with plaster, they created three-dimensional casts of people and animals caught in their final, desperate moments. The resulting figures are both tragic and mesmerizing. Faces twisted in fear, limbs thrown over heads for protection, pets curled up beside their owners. It is a raw, emotional snapshot of a bustling city suddenly brought to a standstill. Walking through the excavation sites, you can't escape the sensation that you're witnessing history as it happened rather than as a distant concept. For many, the plaster casts serve as a powerful memento mori, a Latin phrase reminding us that death comes for everyone. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Siberian Ice Maiden. Hidden beneath the icy terrain of Siberia's Ukok Plateau, a burial chamber protected a figure often referred to as the Ice Maiden or the Princess of Ukok. She wore intricately crafted garments and was accompanied by 6 horses, signifying a high rank or special status in her society. Even more striking are the ornate tattoos that remain visible on her skin, depicting mythic creatures and revealing sophisticated artistry from thousands of years ago. The permafrost preservation allowed for such impeccable detail that researchers can study everything from the texture of her clothing to the pigments used in her body art. The horses by her side suggest elaborate burial customs and a strong belief in the afterlife where status and companionship were still important. Each new insight gleaned from her remains sparks debates over how best to handle such discoveries, since local communities often hold strong cultural and spiritual connections to them. Standing face to face with this ancient figure is a potent reminder that while centuries may separate us, the human story remains surprisingly relatable and undeniably haunting.
Today we'll be counting down some archaeological finds, but not just any archaeological finds. These are ones that were found encased in ice, almost perfectly preserved. So sit back, grab a freezy or some other cold treat, because we're talking about some cool artifacts. I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 ancient artifacts found frozen in ice for thousands of years. And we are kicking things off with the 3,000-year-old arrow. This is a super recent discovery, just happened back in September. A glacial archaeologist named Espen Finstad was hiking through the Jotunheim Mountains in eastern Norway when he came across a wooden arrow. It was so well preserved that to the naked eye, it would probably look brand new. It even still had feathers on it. But Finstad estimated that this arrow was actually around 3,000 years old. He later determined it was likely used by a hunter in the late Stone Age to early Bronze Age. Finstad stated, "What makes the arrow so impressive is its preservation. Though it is broken into 3 parts, the arrow remains attached to the shaft, as do the feathers, known as fletchings, which help to stabilize the arrow's flight path." So this is just one of the many artifacts turning up, once frozen under, thick layers of ice, not just in Norway, but in cold climates all around the world as glaciers continue to melt. If you are enjoying our content so far, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to leave your thoughts, your comments, complaints down below. I'll usually read them. At number 9, we have Mummy Juanita. Mummy Juanita, also known as the Ice Maiden or Lady of Ampato, is an exceptionally well-preserved mummy of an Inca girl which was discovered in 1995. The mummy was found on Mount Ampato, a dormant volcano in the Andes Mountains of southern Peru, by anthropologist Johann Reinhard and his team. Mummy Juanita is believed to have lived during the Inca Empire, making her one of the best preserved ancient bodies ever found. She was approximately 12 to 14 years old at the time of her death. The mummy was found at an altitude of about 20,600 feet, and her discovery was kinda accidental. Reinhard and his team were actually on a mission to recover another Inca mummy when they stumbled on her in a crevice. She was wrapped in several layers of colorful textiles and buried provided with various offerings, including ceramic and metal objects, food items, and small statues. She was probably sacrificed as an offering to the Inca gods. The mummy is currently on display in the Catholic University of Santa Maria's Museum of Andean Sanctuaries in Peru. So get over there immediately. Tap on her glass encasing and tell her Uncle James said hello. First person in the comments to do that will receive a wink emoji from me and a $10 gift certificate to Walden Books. Number 8, the Mammoth Mummy. No, this is not a giant-sized human mummy. That would be pretty awesome. This is pretty awesome too, but it's a mummified woolly mammoth. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists found a well-preserved mammoth in Siberia, later named Yuka. She was a young mammoth, about 6 to 8 years old, and lived around 39,000 years ago. Yuka's body was in really good shape. Its body measured about 2.5 meters in length, and it was remarkably intact, with her trunk, bones, some of her flesh, hair, and even eyes still preserved, making her one of the most well-preserved mammoth specimens ever found. It's pretty incredible to see, not that I've ever seen it in person, but based on pictures and video that I have seen of it, crazy how well preserved it is. Finding a dinosaur in this condition would be absolutely unreal. Anyway, they think she might have fallen into a mud pit or drowned, which helped to preserve her so well. People probably butchered her for meat, as there were cut marks on her bones. Scientists studied her DNA to learn more about mammoths and their connection to modern elephants. Right now, Yuka is currently being held in Moscow. Next up, we have the Greenland Norse textiles. These textiles are a collection of ancient fragments discovered in 1921 in various archaeological sites in Greenland. The textiles provided insights into the types of clothing and weaving techniques of the Norse settlers who lived in Greenland during the medieval period. The sites where these fabrics were found are part of the remnants of Norse settlements in Greenland, which thrived between the 10th and 15th centuries. Fabrics discovered include woolen garments and household items. They were remarkably well preserved due to the cold and dry climate of Greenland, which helped prevent decay. The textiles had a bunch of different weaving patterns, colors, and designs that reflected the skill and artistry of the Norse weavers back in the day. It's interesting to see what their clothing looked like beyond depictions of them in ancient artwork. These fabrics have also been useful in understanding the challenges faced by the Norse settlers in Greenland and how they adapted to the harsh environment. And at number 6, we have the Kostenki 17 artifacts. The Kostenki 17 artifacts were discovered at the Kostenki site in Russia, an archaeological site known for its wealth of Upper Paleolithic finds. The artifacts discovered at the site include bone and antler tools, bone ornaments, and various artifacts made from organic materials. Archaeologists dug up a number of bone and antler tools like spear points, knives, needles, tools that had been crafted with remarkable precision. They also found ornaments made from bone like beads and pendants. On top of that, there were plenty of hunting tools like projectile points, along with bones of animals that they had hunted. Some other notable discoveries at the site were engraved objects and fragments. These engravings often depict animals in geometric patterns, showcasing the type of artwork they would have made at the time. At our number 5 spot, we have the Siberian Ice Maiden, also known as the Princess of Ukok or the Altai Princess. This is a mummy of a young woman that was discovered in 1993 in the Ukok Plateau of the Altai Mountains in Siberia. The Siberian Ice Maiden was discovered by Russian archaeologist Natalia Polosmak in a tomb on the Ukok Plateau. The site was located at an altitude about 8,200 feet. The mummy is believed to date back to around 500 BC, making her approximately 2,500 years old. The mummy was found in a wooden sarcophagus covered with felt blankets and a cowhide rug. She was dressed in intricately woven garments made of wool and felt that was also adorned with jewelry, earrings, a necklace, various ornaments made of gold and other precious metal, so it's likely she held a high social status within the community. Her burial seemed to have been part of a complex ritual too, which led the archaeologists to believe she could have been a priestess or a noblewoman. Number 4, the Etherican brown bear. 2019, scientists made a pretty cool discovery in Siberia. A thousands-year-old brown bear carcass preserved in the permafrost. The ancient brown bear carcass was discovered by reindeer herders. It was incredibly well preserved because of the permafrost conditions, which prevented decay. The carcass dates back approximately 3,500 years, placing it in the late Bronze Age. This age estimation was made through radiocarbon dating, a technique used to determine the age of organic materials based on their content of carbon-14 isotopes. Next on the list is Quede dan Shinichi, which was the name given to a remarkably well-preserved body discovered at the Tatshenshini Alaska Provincial Park in British Columbia, Canada. Quede dan Shinichi was discovered by hunters in the remote wilderness northwestern British Columbia. The body was found partially buried in the ice, surrounded by a variety of artifacts. He was believed to have lived over 550 years ago, around the early 15th century, a member of one of the indigenous tribes that inhabited the region during that time. The body's preservation was due to the glacier ice, which acted as a natural freezer, protecting the remains from decomposition. And along with the body, again, a variety of artifacts were discovered. There was a robe made from animal hides, a spruce root hat, a woven mat, a walking stick, various tools made from stone and bone. The body was then ceremonially reburied in 2000 following traditional rituals and protocols. Coming in at number 2, we have the Landbreen tunic. In 2011, during archaeological excavations in Landbreen, Norway, this ancient piece of clothing was discovered. The tunic was a remarkable archaeological find, revealing more information about ancient Norse clothing and textile techniques. The Landbreen site in the mountains of Norway was once frequented by travelers during the Roman Iron Age, approximately 300 to 500 AD. Because of the ice and snow in the region, many artifacts, including textiles, have been incredibly well preserved. And the tunic, it's made of wool, dates back to around 230 AD. It's a tunic-style garment with a natural brown color, a simple design. It has a twill weave, a pattern commonly used in textiles in that era. Just think of how much of our clothing, by the way, is going to be left behind after we eventually leave Earth or go extinct, let alone all our other crap. We churn out so much stuff on a constant basis, more so than at any point in history. I think finding stuff from this era is going to be so common in the future that it'll be more of a nuisance rather than a remarkable find. Finally though, taking that number 1 spot is Otzi the Iceman. Now, why is this number 1? I don't know, not really any particular ranking going on here, just a good one to close off with. In September of 1991, hikers Helmut and Erika Simon stumbled upon a well-preserved human corpse high in the Alps near the border of Austria and Italy. Later known as Otzi the Iceman, the two hikers saw the remains and actually thought he could have died relatively recently. But no, Otzi was an ancient human who had lived over 5,000 years ago during the late Neolithic period. He was so well preserved because he'd been encased in ice for that thousands and thousands of years. His body was found in the Ötztal Alps. The discovery site was in the Schnalzalval-Sanalis Valley, a region that was once covered by glaciers completely. Scientists discovered that Otzi lived between 3359 and 3105 BCE, making him one of the oldest and most well-preserved naturally mummified humans ever found. He was 5'5" and weighed around 110 pounds. The age at the time of his death was estimated to be around 45 years old. Besides his body, researchers also found a bunch of artifacts and clothing items with him. A copper axe, a quiver of arrows, a bearskin cap, and a coat made of woven grass and hide. Otzi's remains and belongings are currently housed in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. A stone coffin dug up in a Turkish church might actually be the real resting place of the original Saint Nicholas. Hidden for nearly 1,000 years was a massive Crusade-era altar, disguised as rubble and wall plaster, and in England, a medieval church relic turned up in a repair job, a mummified hand claimed to be St. James. These are mysterious ancient artifacts found in churches that changed history. In a town in southern Turkey, archaeologists think they may have just found the real coffin of the original St. Nicholas, the guy who inspired Santa Claus. The stone sarcophagus was found at the Church of St. Nicholas, which has been an excavation site since the late 80s. The limestone coffin is about 6 feet long, buried 5 feet down, and was found in a 2-story annex of the church. According to Associate Professor Ebru Fatma Fandik, that they didn't even realize they were digging into a burial site until animal bones and clay lamps started showing up. That's when they hit the sarcophagus. St. Nicholas died in 343 and was buried at this site. Later, a grander church was built over it under Emperor Theodosius II, and that's when his remains were supposedly moved into this sarcophagus. In 1087, a group of sailors from Bari, Italy, broke into his tomb and took most of his bones back to their city. They placed them in a new shrine at the Basilica di San Nicola, where they're still kept today. But not all the bones were taken. During the First Crusade around 1099, another group, this time from Venice, raided what was left of the tomb and took the remaining bones. So, in 1953, scientists confirmed that the bones from both cities came from the same person, but whether that's actually St. Nick is still up for debate. At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, one of the most sacred places in Christianity, archaeologists recently found something that had been sitting in plain sight for centuries. It's a massive stone altar from the Crusader period, dating back to the 1100s. For years, people thought it was just part of the wall, mostly because it was covered in layers of graffiti and chunks of fallen stone. But once researchers took a closer look, they realized that this thing had been deliberately carved and set in place as part of the original Crusader structure. It's built from massive limestone blocks, including one with a cross carved right into it. According to archaeologist David Gurvich, we've talked about a place where people believe Jesus was buried, so to uncover part of a forgotten altar from the Crusader period is huge. It had been partially destroyed over time, and a lot of it was buried under hundreds of years' worth of rubble. In Reading, England, a church relic resurfaced that people thought was lost forever. A mummified human hand said to belong to St. James the Apostle. It originally came from Reading Abbey, a huge medieval monastery founded in 1121 by King Henry I. During the 1500s, when King Henry VIII shut down England's monasteries and looted them, a lot of relics disappeared. Somehow this one survived though. It was hidden inside an iron box and rediscovered centuries later by workers doing repairs. Eventually, it made its way to St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church in Marlow, where it stayed locked away for years. The hand was, of course, dried and shriveled and partially wrapped in fabric, but it was still clearly human. Went back on display briefly in 2018 before being sent to be studied. Experts can't 100% prove it belonged to James the Apostle, but based on its age, the location, and how relics were handled at the time, it fits. In 2002, a collector went public with a limestone bone box known as an ossuary that had an inscription scratched into the side: James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. If it's legit, that's a huge deal. It would be the only known artifact that actually names Jesus of Nazareth. The box itself is real, dates back to the 1st century. Experts checked the aging on the stone, the weathering and the letters, all of it, but big question was whether the inscription was added much later to, boost its value. That started one of the longest and most expensive court battles in archaeology. The Israeli Antiquities Authority charged the owner with forgery. The whole thing turned into a circus. After years of trial, the charges were dropped. The science couldn't prove the inscription was fake. Some people still doubt it, but no one's been able to say for sure it's modern. In 2023, archaeologists in Germany found something strange in a Roman-era grave. A silver scroll buried with a man who died nearly 1800 years before. When they carefully unrolled the scroll, found it was inscribed with 18 lines of Greek writing, including the names of Jesus, Mary, and several Christian saints. That alone was wild, because this was found in Frankfurt, way north of where Christianity was thought to have spread at the time. The guy was buried sometime between 230 and 270 CE, which means Christians were already up there way earlier than anyone thought about 100 years ahead of the usual timeline. Researchers say the writing on the scroll was meant to act like a charm or spiritual protection. The scroll itself is tiny, just a few inches long, and was buried in an iron capsule next to the man's remains. According to archaeologist Dr. Erwin Emmerling, this is the earliest physical evidence of Christianity in this region, and it changes what we thought we knew about how fast it spread. In 2023, construction crews were doing work near an old Dominican monastery in Poland when they cracked open something really cool, a medieval knight's tomb. It had a massive stone slab with a full carving of a knight in armor, sword, shield, all of it. When archaeologists lifted it, there was a skeleton laid out perfectly underneath, exactly where you'd expect him to be. The carving was done on limestone from Gotland, which is a Swedish island. The knight was tall, probably someone important, and this grave was built to show it. The carving had symbols like a coat of arms, so whoever buried him wanted people to know exactly who he was, or at least that he was worth remembering. The area used to be a church cemetery way back in the 12th century, and this tomb probably dates to the 1200s or 1300s. And fun fact, the whole thing was under what used to be an ice cream shop. So the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is supposed to be the spot where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. It's one of the most famous religious sites in the world, but while restoring part of the floor, researchers found something small but weirdly important: ancient seeds. They dug down and found traces of grape seeds, olive pits, and pollen buried in the soil under the church. Now, that doesn't sound all that exciting, but those plants match up with the gospel descriptions of a garden being nearby at the time of the crucifixion. Grapes and olives were big in that region, especially for things like wine and oil used in rituals, so finding that kind of evidence under the building is kind of cool. The seeds were found in layers that date back about 2,000 years, so the timeline lines up as well. Doesn't prove every detail of the story, obviously, but it's enough to make archaeologists pretty excited. Right near the southern wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, archaeologists were digging in a spot known as the Opal, and ended up finding a stash of Byzantine gold. They found a small stash of gold buried in the floor, like actual treasure. There were 36 gold coins, a gold bar, 2 earrings, and a round medallion engraved with a menorah, a Torah scroll, and a shofar. That medallion is cool because it's Jewish imagery, but it was found in a Christian-era building. The coins date back to around the early 600s, right before the Persian army rolled through the city, so it looks like someone buried their valuables before things got ugly and just never made it back. It sat undisturbed for 1,400 years. The fact that Jewish religious symbols were found inside a Christian-era home also shows that this part of the city wasn't strictly divided. People were living close together, even if they didn't believe the same things, and all that info came from a handful of gold buried in someone's floor. Archaeologists digging in northern Ethiopia found the ruins of a 4th century Christian church. It's the oldest one discovered so far in sub-Saharan Africa. The site's called Beta Samati, and it used to be part of the Aksumite Empire, a big trade hub back in the day. The church was built in basilica style with stone walls, columns, and a central platform that lines up with early Christian designs from the Roman world. Found crosses, ceramic incense burners, carved pendants, a gold ring with a bull's head on it. That ring probably came from somewhere outside Ethiopia, maybe traded in from Jordan or Arabia. There were also dozens of small animal figurines, mostly of cattle, scattered around the site. Inscriptions found inside mention Christ by name, which is a big deal considering how early this site is. This means Christianity had, of course, already reached this part of Africa by the early 300s, so way earlier than most people thought. The area was connected to trading routes that stretched all the way to the Middle East, so ideas, goods, and religions were constantly flowing through. And in 2021, archaeologists working in northern Jordan explored an old underground church built inside a cave, and inside it, they came across a tiny lead scroll covered in ancient writing. The church had been carved into the rock and might be one of the earliest places where Christians gathered in secret. The scroll was tightly rolled, only about the size of a matchstick, so they had to scan it with high-res imaging to even read what was inside. The writing's in ancient Hebrew, and even though some of it still hasn't been fully decoded, early scans showed names linked to Jesus and what might be early Christian symbols. The scroll might have been used like a prayer or a kind of protective charm, something people back then would have kept hidden from Roman authorities, which is why this was found buried under the church's altar. Researchers are still being cautious about dating it, but think it could push back written references to early Christianity by decades, maybe even from the 1st century. If that's the case, this could be one of the earliest written traces of Christianity outside of Jerusalem.